Hello and welcome to episode 50 of the Debt Rebel podcast. I am so glad that you're here. Ooh, today is a good one. This is my unpopular opinion episode because we're going to talk about today why I don't own an iPhone. And yes, it's on purpose, which I feel like if you don't own an iPhone, it's intentional, but I'm going to unpack today why I personally don't own an iPhone, why my husband doesn't have one. I know that a huge part of our listener base listens on Apple Podcasts, so hello and welcome. This is not an episode that's like bashing anyone for having an iPhone or being an Apple user, Mac user, whatever. Today is just my opinion and my perspective on this. So I hope that this episode is helpful for you when it comes to making our buying choices. That's really what today's episode is about, and a little bit of crunching the numbers, and I'll explain more in a little bit. But today is not one of those episodes that's like us versus them. It's not that kind of thing. So I just want to encourage you to listen all the way through. It's a different perspective than you might have heard before, or maybe not. Maybe you've already heard this before, but I like to say I'm a little weird sometimes. This is one of those things that makes me a little bit weird and goes against the grain sometimes. So I hope that you enjoy today's episode.
Welcome to the Debt Rebel podcast, where we discuss the ins and outs of personal finance for families so you can eliminate the burden of debt, create financial margins, and learn a new way to interact with your money. I'm your host, Jules the Budget Nerd, and I have been in your shoes. My husband and I have paid off over $107,000 in consumer debt until we finally threw in the towel and decided it wasn't for us. Throughout our journey, we learned another way to do life without debt, and that's my hope for you. You can learn more about our story and see full show notes on my website, julesthebudgetnerd.com. That's JEWLZ, thebudgetnerd.com. Now let's dive into today's episode.
All right, so why I don't own an iPhone? Well, because I've always kind of been one of those people that's like, all right, just because everyone else is doing it, doesn't make sense. Do I want to do that? And so if you've listened to the show for a little while, or maybe you've heard the very first episode of this podcast, my husband and I decided that money wasn't going to be the thing that would break us up. Well, we got into a whole bunch of debt, and it was something that we argued about a lot. And so now that we are on the other side of that and debt free, we are very intentional with the things that we buy and the things that we spend our money on. One of those is our phones and our cell phone plans and the accessories and all the things that go with it, right? And you're probably like, okay, well, it's just a phone, right? So why is it such a big deal? When I was looking back at our expenses for when we were really, really trying to squeeze every last penny and cent out of our budget, because at one point we couldn't put food on the table and pay our mortgage in the same month, that we knew something had to give. And in today's day and age, we didn't at that point we had a landline at one point, but we were like, well, we're paying extra for that. So we got rid of that, and it was down to our phones. And so it was important for us to be able to have communication with our friends and family. But we were spending quite a bit of money on phones. Now, when I got my very first phone, you still had to pay per minute and that kind of stuff. So if you're listening to this, all right, yes, maybe you're not there. Maybe you were still texting. My very first phone I got as my high school graduation present. I don't know about anybody else, but that was a really big deal. And then my parents paid for the bill until they were like, hey, you have a job, you need to pay for it. And this was part of the deal. They were just going to buy it for me for graduation, and then they ended up paying the bill for a little while. But if you haven't had a chance to listen to the episode when the bank of mom and dad closed, that's a perfect example, right? So when it came to me having to pay for my own bills, I was like, hold on a second. And this was before the iPhone was really a really big deal. And so I just had an Android when smartphones started to become a thing, because I had a BlackBerry, the whole evolution of phones. Anyway, so when I started getting smartphones were the thing, and we got one of those. They were really expensive, and you were paying for those. You had to pay for them up front, and then the monthly bill was a lot. And then they switched. Then you had to get, your credit checked, and you had to pay monthly for it on top of your monthly bill to just have the service and all of that stuff. So it got to be where we were like, all right, is there any parts of when we got looking at our bills, any of these things that can go, that can just really get us down to like the bare minimum so that we could make some progress on paying off our debt and getting some breathing room because we were in over our heads. And the phone was one of those things. So I looked into all these options. There weren't as many as there are now. And I have had numerous cell phone carriers because they've been bought, they've been sold, they've been traded, all of this stuff. But when I started looking into iPhones, which there's nothing wrong with iPhones, and if it has all the things that you need and it does the things you need, great. But for us, it wasn't something, we didn't have to have the latest, greatest, newest technology. We just needed something that worked. And so for us, we made the decision not to have an iPhone because we could buy an Android or a Windows phone or whatever for a lot cheaper and still accomplish the goal. And that's really what it was about for us, is we just had this goal, like eye on the prize. That's what we always say in our house, is like, what's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish here? And we just wanted to be able to make phone calls and not spend a ton of money to do it. So that's why we got a non-iPhone, which just happens to be an Android. I don't even remember what brand I have now. What is this? It's a Samsung. Anyway, it really doesn't matter. I can't even remember. But we've had all kinds of phones throughout the years, but we always pay for our phones upfront. So when we have a phone, we just take really good care of it and we try our best not to drop it. We do buy the heavier duty cases so that we're not paying for the extra insurance. Now, that's a personal decision. I know my dad back in the day when pagers were a thing and he needed them for work, and he was working construction. I don't know how many pagers got buried in the ground because it fell out of his pocket or whatever. But you have to figure out what works best for you and what you're willing to pay for. So for us, we're really careful with our phones, and um, we use them with care, and so we don't have to pay for the extra insurance, and we just kind of assume the risk if we crack it or break it, that we replace it or get it repaired. And so we know how much those things cost, and so that money is set aside. If that chance happens that we, drop it and crack it, we can go get a new screen for it or whatever. So we don't pay for the extra insurance for it either. But the phone that I have in my hand right now that I'm looking at, it's like we usually spend about $250. I think we got this one on sale and it was probably about $190. So, and we keep our phones for about 2 or 3 years. So if you do the math, at 3 years and $250, and we pay for it up front, so we're not paying any interest or additional fees. Now, I could hear you might say, okay, wait a second, but if you're paying for it over time, then it's the same price. Sometimes it is, but if you're paying for it over time, then they're going to increase the total price for you. And it's not necessarily advertised that they're increasing the total price for you, so that they're making a little bit of extra money, whoever the carrier is that has the phone. We usually spend about $250, keep it for 2.5, 3 years. And then our cell phone bill for 2 lines is $28 plus tax a month. Now you're probably going, wait a second, you don't have any of the extras. No, we don't, because most of the time we have unlimited calling and texting, which is great. We need that. And then we're connected to Wi-Fi most of the time, so we don't have a huge data draw. And so, but when we do, we have plenty based on our past usage. So go back and look at your phone and see how much you actually use it, and see if you're paying for more than you actually need. And that was what we found for us. So we just downgraded to these phones that just did the basics, covered all of our needs. We buy a little bit of the extra additional storage so that we can add more pictures, because that's where we keep most of our pictures now, that kind of stuff. And then we buy a few little accessories for it. So we spend about $300 on our phone. If you multiply that out over 5 years, so just as an example, if we spend $300 a year on our phone, and I just looked up before this, if you get an iPhone 16, which as of this recording is the new one, if you have it with a cell phone provider, 1 year, $1,600. So over the course of a year, that's a $1,600 difference. And if you do that over 5 years, that's $8,000 that you could be saving just by having a non-iPhone. And this isn't to like say like, iPhones are bad again. That's not what this conversation is about. It's about making intentional decisions and choices when it comes to your spending and what works for you. And so if you use all of the things that Apple provides and it is like something that's really, really great and serves all of your needs, then fantastic, go with it. But one thing that we found for our family is that we didn't need the latest and greatest technology, and we didn't want to get stuck in like that, the upgrade thing. If our phone starts to get a little bit slow, then you know what? Maybe it is time for an upgrade because phones do wear out. We use them often. And I mean, I'm on mine probably more than I would like to be, but we use it for what it was intended for, and that's all. And so we are very specific about what we spend our money on because it comes at a cost if we are just spending to spend money and just buying it because everyone else is. Then that's where like when the title of this podcast is the Debt Rebel podcast. I like to think I'm a rebellious person when it makes sense. And so for us, that is when it is made sense, is we rebel against what is the majority of people own a specific type of phone, and it's fine. But what works best for us and meets our needs is something that's not. We also don't have brand new cars because that's not what meets the need for us. And the thing that meets the need for us is for our lives to be able to have more time with our friends and our family and do the things that we want to be able to do. And if that means that we are using a smartphone that's not prime time top of the line, then that's what that means. So it's just a trade-off. Yes, do we get made fun of because we don't have an iPhone? Yes, of course we do. Do we, leave, what is it, the green bubble or whatever? I don't even know what it is. I don't even know what my text messages look like when it comes up on an iPhone, but people just go, "Oh, you're one of those." Yes, I am one of those. And I'm perfectly fine with it because what matters more to my husband and I and our family is that we are still able to interact with our friends and family on social media and on our phones, and we can still text them and send pictures and do all of those things. But it also means that we have created a lifestyle for ourselves where we don't have to work overtime and we don't have to do these things. And yes, this is just one piece of the whole puzzle. So it isn't the entire thing. And I'm not saying that if you have an iPhone that you have like poor money management or anything like that. But for us, it was a pause and think, why are we buying the things that we're buying? Is it because we feel like we're missing out on what everyone else has? And that's why we're very intentional about what we buy and asking ourselves why we're buying the things that we're buying. And so do we buy it because we need it, or is it because we want it? And life isn't about like just only buying the things you need. And yes, you should have joy in your life, but if it's taking away from the things that matter to you more or the people that matter to you more, then whatever kind of phone you drive or whatever kind of phone you have or car you drive or your address or whatever, if those things are taking you further away, then it's a time to reevaluate some of your decisions when it comes to how you spend your money. And so that's all today's episode is challenging our thoughts of why we buy the things that we buy. Are we intentional, or are we just doing it because, we saw this commercial and it was like, oh my gosh, this is really exciting. Like, I know that there's a whole culture too of like getting the new phone and upgrading when the new phone comes out. And so that's great. If that's something that is like you enjoy, that great, do it if it brings you joy. But if it doesn't and you have those fears of missing out, or you're like, man, I'm paying $250 a month to have this phone. And so really looking at the cost when it comes to the whole cost of ownership of your device is, what does it cost you every month to own that? And if you didn't and you opted for something else, what could you spend that difference on? So like in that example, if you're spending $1,600 a year in savings, there's your emergency fund, plus like maybe that's a really good payment on one of your credit cards to nearly pay it off. Purchasing a new phone and you're putting it on a credit card, then that's keeping that cycle going. But when it's time, maybe wait on that upgrade until your phone starts to act up. And then when it's time to make that decision, is look at it and go, hey, is there is there a way that I can still do all the things that I normally do with my phone, but for, maybe it's not the latest model. Maybe it's the one right before it. Or maybe I need to completely change my phone carrier because I'm not able to get the same benefits that I had, and it's not providing me the same coverage that I had. Those types of things. Again, it's not about the phone. It's about taking control of how you spend your money. So yes, this is one of those areas that I rebel in because for myself and my family, it doesn't make sense for us. Neither one of our jobs require a, high amount of tech. Producing this podcast show and my coaching, there's some tech, absolutely, but I can still do all of that with my PC and with my Android phone. But do what is best for you and your family. And remember, it's not about the phone, it's about making decisions that are intentional with our money so that we can have that opportunity to be able to spend time with our friends and our family doing the things that we love to do. I would love to hear on what you thought of this episode. And also, if you have some other unpopular money opinions, I want to hear them because let's chat about this. Let's have a conversation about this because I think this is a great place to get started, especially talking about our money. That's what our culture also says. Hey, you know what? Don't talk about money. But I feel like as a culture that gets us where we are, right? So let's talk about it. That's also one of the things within the coaching membership that I have. It's a great opportunity to be around other people that might be a little bit different than doing things a little bit differently than the norm. And you know what? iPhone users are totally welcome in our communities. I would love to hear what you think. Please send me a message on Instagram and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Debt Rebel podcast. Now, if you want to take your next step, check out my website, julesthebudgetnerd.com. That's JEWLZ, thebudgetnerd.com. I've created a bunch of resources just for you. So hop on over, check it out, and we can connect more there. If you loved today's episode, I would be honored if you would hit that subscribe button and leave me a review. And remember, every step towards financial independence is a rebellion against debt. So stay strong, keep pushing forward, and fight the good fight. Until next time, Debt Rebels, stay resilient.